What up there, cowpokes? Roger Clark here, aka Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2. So, gosh, yeah, there's loads to talk about here.
Your friend? Why would I do that?
Come on, Milton!
It's over. No more bargains, no more deals.
And I remember when we were shooting this scene. Now, typically, we weren't in a bank. All of our sets were built from scaffolding and pipes, you know, so everything would be dimensionally accurate, but you didn't know of it. You didn't know what it actually looked like until you went to an animator and asked them. And then more often than not, they would bring you to a monitor and they'd go, yeah, that's what it looks like. And that was invaluable for our performances, you know, because the more informed we were, you know, the more attention to detail that we could give. But yeah, that shot, I remember the guy playing Hickok, who was playing Milton. He was much closer to us than what the scene suggests. He was probably maybe 10, 15 feet away. And the director had to keep telling him to shout because he didn't understand that in the game he was going to be 30, 40 feet away. All these little intricacies of performance capture that it doesn't necessarily translate to film, which I find fascinating. The actor who played Curzon wasn't there that day. And it was a stand-in who actually got shot. And then in the end, they got Curzon's data. They got him falling down from the gunshot a few days later. But yeah, this was such a sad scene. When a world is created with as much focus and as much attention to detail as what Rockstar Games did with the Red Dead Redemption world, that immersion is very difficult to compete with, you know? It's when you put so much work into this world and making it alive. I think that really makes you feel like you're there. And when you are there, when you feel like you're in it, you know, when you think you can actually pick the dust up and the dirt and touch it with your hands, you know, I think you are going to be a little bit more invested in the story. I really believe that Red Dead 2, what it really excels at is immersion in a very developed and alive sandbox world.
We got lawmen in 3 different states after us.
My first few months on the job, I was doing theater off-Broadway. We were doing Midsummer Night's Dream. And I was working with this one guy. Grandfather was from Flagstaff, Arizona. And he did a great impression of his grandfather. And I loved it. And I started copying him. Whoever he was, this guy sure did have a big, huge influence on Arthur.
I'll keep her in black, on your behalf.
John Wayne and Dave's grandfather from Flagstaff, Arizona.
Where's our money?
I have heard a lot of people tell me Arkansas. There's a lot of people in Arkansas that kind of that sound very similar to Arthur, and I guess that would make sense. That's one of them states that kind of has a bit of both, depending whether Arthur was high or low honor. There would often be different dialogue, and so I would play, okay, Arthur's a good guy here. But the real challenge was when there wasn't a difference in dialogue. And I knew, okay, so he may be high honor here, or he may be low honor. So I had to come up with an ambiguous enough performance so that it would match and suit either playing style. And that was an interesting challenge.
You have my back. Always, Dutch.
And I really valued the relationship I had with Benjamin Byron Davis when we were working on the game, because we really started to get a very good and intimate understanding of each other's motivations. We would just talk about it all the time in the green room, even after work, you know. Sometimes we'd have a beer and we'd find a quiet corner in a bar and we would say, hey, you know, did you see those sides that we just got? Oh yeah, we were constantly talking about it. There was a lot of pages from a lot of stories that we took influence from to get Dutch and Arthur's relationship down.
Yes. And when Spring and John brings the law down on all of us, what then, Arthur? Well, I guess we'll have another fight on our hands.
You got tuberculosis. Really sorry for you, son. It's a hell of a thing.
Yeah, he does get worse. So that was a bit of a challenge because obviously I think the biggest factor that I was trying to communicate was fatigue. We didn't want to compromise the playability of the game. We didn't want Arthur to slow down. We didn't want Arthur to be slower. Then you're punishing the player for carrying on with the narrative. And what was also a bit of a challenge is I for the life of me, I couldn't find any audio of people suffering from tuberculosis, because by the time they had that technology, it was a cure. But I did find some. I did find a bit of audio. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a TB epidemic in India in the 1940s, and I was able to catch some of their audio. So I took pages from all of those things to communicate Arthur's sickness. And then again, a lot of the times the animators and the director were invaluable to me, because we didn't shoot in sync. So I often had to ask, how sick is Arthur here?
Well, leaving love aside, you think we got this?
Where in the story is this? They would tell me.
We have a good doctor in town.
Yes, I already saw him.
Like on a scale of 1 to 10 for reference, and that helped me. That helped me a great deal.
I had a son once, years ago. Oh, what was his name? Isaac. What happened? I got there one day and saw 2 crosses outside, and I knew right away. Turned out some bastards had come through, robbed him, and shot him dead, and offered $10. It hardened me, feeling that kind of pain. But I know now that you don't get to live a bad life and have good
that's
things
crazy
happen
too,
to
because
you.
once you hear that,
all I can do now is try and make some things
all this other stuff starts to make more sense. Like, at the beginning of the game, Arthur has a bit of animosity towards John. And at first, you don't properly understand why. I mean, what does Arthur care if John decided to abscond for a year, But now, after we hear this, then we understand. Arthur had a son, too. And Arthur would give anything to have that son back. And here's John not even acknowledging that Jack is his at first, and then going off and doing his own thing. And basically throwing what Arthur considers to be this huge blessing, just throwing it to the wind. Of course, John develops to become an excellent father, but, when we first meet him in Red Dead Redemption 2, not really the case. And Arthur resents that. And it's only until that then we realize why. Because John has what Arthur lost. I don't want to get too much into cut material, but there was in a very early version, Arthur suffered a loss at the very beginning of the game in Coulter, and that was cut. I can see then that the writers never really forgot about it, that they obviously were saving it for something later, and they decided to incorporate it here. And I think it was such a genius decision, because it reveals so much more of Arthur's motivations, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense now, And some players don't even register it. My headcanon is high honor helping John. That's the most peaceful ending he's gonna get. That's the one where he sees the sun. And I had known that Arthur wasn't going to make it from about the 2nd month. So for over 4 years, I knew how much I loved John Marston. So I felt an obligation to, at least, if not recreate it, at least match it in emotion, So I was nervous. I was very, very nervous. I had been working with this crew and with this cast for 4.5 years by the time we did it. So luckily I had grown to trust them, and there wasn't one weak link in the whole chain. Everyone brought their A game. Everyone was incredibly talented and intelligent. And I was very grateful to have them all as colleagues, because, obviously it's not just about Arthur, And another scene that I found difficult to do is when Grimshaw slaps Arthur for being dirty. Here's the thing I don't get about it, see? She makes him, if the player chooses to be an absolute filthy animal, then eventually what will happen is the next time he goes back to camp, Grimshaw's gonna tell him off for being a stinky, stinky little boy. And then she smacks him around and makes him wash himself in this barrel full of water. But here's the thing, Arthur pays her 50 cents for the privilege. Why? It makes no sense, Yeah, Arthur pays a little bit extra to have a woman bathe him when he goes to those bar baths, That makes sense. He's paying for a service, yeah? But Grimshaw demands that he does it, and then he does it himself anyway, and it's just a barrel full of water. It's not like there's soap or anything. Why in God's name does she get 50 cents for that? She hasn't done a thing. She's done absolutely nothing.
I'm a fool, Miss Grimshaw.
Oh, that is not up for debate. But in my camp, you'll be a clean fool.
This is typically what I would work with, and it's pretty well balanced. But sometimes, one thing I learned to do, which is pretty cool. So the holster's on your right thigh, right? I figured out a way to pull the gun out like this, right? Like that. So I was using the holster to push the gun back, and then it would spin out of the holster, and then I would pull the hammer back mid-spin, so that it actually isn't the fastest way to do it, but it does look pretty cool. Yeah, there are lots of more studios that I would love to work with. I would love Naughty Dog, Kojima, Insomniac, Sucker Punch because of Ghosts of Tsushima. Those studios, I feel, they can rival Rockstar when it comes to storytelling. Thanks for sharing that with me. I had enjoyed sharing it with you. I've been Roger Clark. I'll catch you later then.